For permission to quantum leap the world in all life forms on all planes and dimensions, seen and unseen, connected with planet Earth, to let us go beyond our known potential into the greatest unknown golden age the universes and worlds and all planets have ever experienced.
Kathy teaches the spiritual truth so that you may create a better life and be able to make positive changes for yourself and for the planet. She helps us remember that we are not powerless, but very creative spiritual beings having an Earth experience. Time to quantum leap into the age of divine enlightenment and let Kathy provide you with the tools of knowledge you need to awaken spiritually. That's the Quantum Leap Show. Let Light Unite every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio, Studio B.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons. Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, your carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply, though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958, and Studio B is 716-748-0112. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Good afternoon, this is Debbie West. This is Lost Knowledge Radio Show, and today we have an exciting guest. We have Julia Cannon, who is the author of Soul Speak, The Language of Your Body, and she's also an energy worker. She has created light casting, which directs energy to regenerate the body intuitively. She has a 20-year career as a registered nurse in intensive care and home health, and she's also the daughter of the well-known spiritual leader Dolores Cannon, and also co-founder of Ozark Mountain Publishing, which is the publishing arm for Dolores' many books. I think there's been 17 published to date and 2 more to come. So, Julia, we are so honored to have you as our guest today on Lost Knowledge, and so happy that you could be here for today's show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
And I have my co-host, Michael Hathaway. Michael, are you connected?
I am connected. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I am fine.
Super.
So, Julia, I wanted to talk firstly about your book. I know that you have a book out called Soul Speak, and that it's used to develop people's intuitive skills and ability to understand their body and what their body might be telling them about themselves. So can you talk a little bit about the book? How did it come about? And, sort of like a little bit of history behind how you came up with this particular concept?
Sure. It started actually during classes. I was helping my mother do her hypnosis classes, the Quantum Healing Hypnosis. And this book, when you read it, you'll find out I'm not one that just goes, oh, yay, give me an assignment and I'll just take it. No, I'm a very resistant person. And so I kept getting the messages during the class from them, my higher self. I had enough happening then to be able to hear them and get messages. And during the class, people kept asking about different illnesses and symptoms because it was coming through the sessions that the way my mother was doing them, that these different symptoms of the body were messages from your higher self, from real you, just trying to tell you what to do and where to go and what's going on. And so people were saying, well, can this be put into a book? These are the students. Can this just be put into a book and everything? Well, then they would keep telling me, this is your book. You're supposed to do this. And I'm like, well, this isn't my material. It's my mother's material. You know, I can't do that. And they're like, this is your book. And so I went to my mother and I said, look, this is what I'm getting. These are the messages. And I said, you know, this is your material, so how about we both do this together? And she's like, no, this is your book. I'm like, darn it. So that went on for like, it was at least 5 years. They kept giving me messages and pushing me and everything, and I resisted in about every single way you can. You know, it just wasn't something I was jumping aboard to do. And I just kept saying, well, you know, if I'm supposed to write, if this is supposed to be my book, then they'll just put the pen in my hand and give me the words to write and all this stuff, you know. And no, it doesn't happen that way. And so finally, 2012, somewhere around the beginning of the year, somewhere in the first part of the year, I got this very loud message. And it said, look, okay, your playing time is over. If you don't do it, you have 1 year. If you don't do it, we're giving it to someone else. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. And so I was like, okay, I got serious then. But meanwhile, I had been getting a lot of things, and I'd been pulling the things together, but I just wasn't serious about it. And so that got me serious. It always made sense to me. And the reason I was so excited about it, and it made sense that it would be my book, was when Mom would come back from a session and she'd be talking about what the messages were. And I'm like, well, that just makes sense, you know, because I had been in nursing, and I love the body. I think the body is miraculous. And when these messages were coming through, it was like that. It makes total sense. It's just a different language, and we just don't understand it. And so as we kept getting more and more, or just based on what little I knew at that point, I said, well, if that means that, then this could mean this. And sure enough, it did. You know, I just picked something else because it's very literal. And so that's just kind of how it started. And then it just kept growing. And as I accepted my role with the whole thing, it just really started blossoming. So in a nutshell, that's it.
So does the book talk about it has the word soul in it. So does it talk about your past lives and connecting that to what you're experiencing in the now moment, or is it more like strictly a physical sensation?
No, it's both. Because sometimes some of the things that you have going on may be coming from another life. Well, a lot of phobias. In fact, most of your phobias come from the way you died in another life. So those things, you would want to take care of that. You know, okay, realize where it's coming from, let it go back. It's part of that life. It has nothing to do with this one. And so you put it back in its place. The other thing, so that's one of the things of discerning where it's coming from and then what it's meaning in that way. Everything else, but they're all physical symptoms. They're all physical things that are happening. They're emotional or whatever, but they have their messages. You know, they're coming from a past life, or they're coming from this one and trying to tell you something. And most of the messages have to do with your direction. Usually we get off course. You know, we had a plan when we were coming in. We wanted to accomplish certain things, and we wanted to have certain experiences. And sometimes we just get so distracted, and we get so overwhelmed by all the distractions and all the things happening. I like to compare it to a maze. It's like you have this maze to get through, and sometimes, you know, those walls are so high, you know, you can't see where you're going, and so sometimes we just end up going round and round in circles, and sometimes we just stop and give up. Well, that's where these messages come in, is to try to get us back on track, get us moving again, get us doing whatever it was we wanted to accomplish when we came in.
Interesting. Yeah, so you kind of get lost in what we call the 3D illusion.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. It's been created beautifully for that.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Louise Hay, too, where she would identify, this is sort of a preempt to that, which sounds like where you're actually listening to your body before you create a disease, but hers was kind of like when you manifest the disease, that it has, you know, a connection to, you know, your soul purpose, mm-hmm. and yeah.
Well, actually, this is actually taking it beyond Louise Hay. In fact, that's what I used to say is, because that was one of my resistances. It's like there's all these wonderful books out there on this subject. And Louise Hay, I mean, look what she did. She was the groundbreaker. But what this has done is that was appropriate at that time, you know, because it was totally new thought. That was some things like, what? You know, these means things and stuff. And so this has now taken it to another level of understanding of exactly where the messages are coming from and then what to do with them. Rather than just affirmations, it's how you can actually talk to your body and talk to your higher self to resolve the issues.
Can I ask two questions? One is, Julia, do you think you were part of the soul group that was in on the human design of the body? And secondly, do you consider yourself a medical intuitive?
Good question. Ooh, I just got the what I call truth bumps. You know, the goosebumps that you get and the little shivers that go up and down you. I've been told.
It's like you know it.
Yes. I was told when you get those that means whatever you just heard or whatever you just said was truth. And so I like to call them truth bumps. And I got them all up and down my legs when you were asking those. So that's interesting. I have never thought about what soul group I'm in. I actually don't have any idea, but that's interesting. When you asked that, it really resonated. So who knows? I just know that all of this really makes a lot of sense to me. As far as the medical intuitive, some people have said that that's what I do. I think, but again, that happens spontaneously. I was doing energy work and I was just learning, and I'd been taught how to do it remotely. And so someone was asking for some remote work, and I was trying, okay, how do I do this? And I envisioned them laying on a massage table, and all of a sudden I saw myself over them. It was like I'm up on the ceiling and looking at them, and I'm like, okay, well, what do you want me to do? And all of a sudden they just took me inside their body, and it was just showing me all these things inside the body. And then it was like, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and this is how we're going to fix this. And I'm like, wow, that's just really cool. Well, I was talking to somebody later, and they said, oh, yeah, that's a medical intuitive. Well, I didn't know, and that's a lot of the things I do. I just do them. I don't know I don't know the terms for them. I just do them. So I guess I could be. I don't advertise myself that way. So.
Yeah, it sounds it to me.
Okay.
So, Julia, tell me about light casting. Is that something that came before the book, and is it what kind of a technique is that you developed?
Sure. It came before the book. Yes, that was that energy work that I was taught. I was actually taught reconnective healing, and but then whenever I started doing it, that's what I meant by I was doing what they said. But then when I did it, all of a sudden it just took on a life of its own. And it doesn't look anything like what Eric Pearl taught. And I've talked to other people that took it also, and it's like it just seems to do something. It morphs. And so I thought, well, I'll call it light casting. Now, where that word comes from is this is something that happened, oh goodness, more than 10 years ago. When was it? Anyway, longer ago than that, I was hit by the etheric 2x4 and being directed to go for my life to go a different direction. I was registered nurse. I had my own company. I was doing all this wonderful corporate, stuff. And the universe was going, you need to be going over here. You need to go to Arkansas. You need to do this. And it was like, I see what it was saying now, but at that point I'm going, why? What's the point? Why? I don't get this. I don't understand. And there was and it kept doing this over a long period of time. And then finally, one time, I think it was you hit this point of no return. It's like, I think you give yourself only so much wiggle room. You've got to go this direction. And it was like, you're going to go over here. And so my life as it was ceased to exist. I mean, that 2x4 came in and it shut down my entire life. And it was like, you're going to go over here. Because at that point I said, why on earth would I want to go, and how are you going to do it, and stuff like that. And so it's like, okay, we'll show you how. And they just plucked me out of my life as I knew it and dropped me into this world in Arkansas. And this was there's like an interim period here. There's a limbo period. And I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And so my mother did a session with me. And in that session, at one point she was like just trying to get some guidance, like, you know, what's coming up for me? What am I going to do down the road? And I saw myself on a stage with lights coming out of my hands. And I was moving them in this rhythmic way. And all I could hear was, I'm teaching people how to manifest. Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, then right after that, I was telling someone about it, and they said, well, have you heard about, you know, first of all, your mother's book, that's how Jesus healed, and then have you heard about reconnective healing? And so, and this is a little long story, but so anyway, so that's what got me on that path to go find reconnective healing. Well, then I was telling someone else about this. I was going with my mother to some talks that she was doing, and we were at an experiencer group. And I was talking about what had happened in the session. And this person next to me, he said, oh, have you, do you know anything about Lemuria? And I'm like, no. And he said, well, that's what they used to do in Lemuria. They had lights coming out of their hands, and if anybody needed anything, they would just shoot light at them. And they called them light casters. And I'm like, oh, and it just resonated. My whole body vibrated when he told me the story. And I'm like, okay, well, I just know when I start doing this that I'm going to call it I'm going to call myself a light caster. And then as it just kept developing and I realized this is something, I just decided to call it light casting, because it's what you're doing. You're casting light, you know, the healing light into wherever it needs to be. And
yeah, so it's interesting because one of the main topics, the themes that's been coming out recently on our show is the you know, that light and frequency can kind of determine you know your where you're at here on the earth plane, and we don't understand that. You know, we don't measure light and frequency, although I think there are ways to do it. People like you can probably do it intuitively, but it's not even recognized, you know, yet medically. It was in the ancient times, like you say, during Atlantis and Lemurian times. So hopefully we're getting back to that, recovering all that lost knowledge, like, you know, what we're trying to do. So let me just read something here. This is from the website. It's about your book. It says, the language of your body is a metaphysical book that is bound to intrigue both people of science and medicine, as well as people looking to connect with their own higher power. And then another one says, the book is very well organized and could even be used as a teaching tool. The author has a background in education in the medical field, and her logic, presentation, and material reflect that. And I could go on and on. I mean, the reviews are raving about this book. I even talked to somebody recently that took your mother's quantum healing class, and she said when she started her practice, she uses the book all the time. Oh. So, you know, for anybody that's interested in kind of discovering how they can listen to their body and use the information wisely, we encourage you to investigate Julia Cannon's book, Soul Speak, The Language of Your Body, available on Amazon. So, Julia, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with Ozark Publishing and the new university. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's really exciting that you're opening. Is it what's it going to be called?
Cannon University of Metaphysical Studies. And
where is it located?
It's right here in Huntsville, Arkansas. We don't have the building yet. It's all that's our next phase, is the actual building. We're kind of figuring exactly how we start it. The Quantum Healing Hypnosis Therapy, QHHT, is the cornerstone of it, and it's the basis. So probably, and it's already online, and we have our classes, like you said, your friend went to it. We have level 1 and level 2 classes, and we have this whole structure around it that is wonderful. And so probably what we're looking at doing is just start adding on to that and filling it in with other things so that you can actually get degrees within that program. And then we can add on other alternative types of healings, maybe naturopathy, homeopathy, aromatherapy, things like that, to where you can actually have degrees and then fill it in with all these metaphysical wonderful metaphysical teachings, within there. So you can get certificates, you can get degrees. So that's the picture right now, and we're just starting we made the announcement earlier this year about having it because it was, again, it was all, everything we do is from guidance. I mean, it's messages we receive and we're guided to do it. And so we didn't really fully know. I mean, when I first got the image, I'm like, what? That's really what you want to do? so we're going. We're like, okay, we're moving. We're moving along with it. And so now it's like, okay, what is this thing going to look like? So that's where we're at now, is kind of creating it. And it's really fun to come up with a curriculum and everything. So, but we really have a lot of it already done with the QHHT. So
right. So let's talk about that for a minute, because that is sort of the trademark that you talked about, the quantum healing hypnosis therapy. And what is that?
That is the technique that my mother developed. She has been in hypnosis for over 45 years, and she developed her own technique. Because when she started, it was back in the day of Watch the Shiny Object. It was the long, drawn-out methods and of induction and testings and everything. And so then when she really started taking it on full time, where she really wanted to do something, it was a little bit later, and they were starting to do some newer things with visualization and things like that. So she just started practicing a lot of different things, because she had things done with her. She'd been put under, and she didn't care for some of the things. And she thought, well, why do I have to do it that way? And so she started experimenting with it and throwing some things out and putting things in, and just kept refining until she came up with this technique that is just beautiful. And it's very fast induction, and you get very deep, very quickly. And what's beautiful then, what happened over the time, and we're probably talking now 10 years ago or more, she started getting this, it would come in little by little, and then she started seeing this pattern, and she realized, she started realizing she could just call on this. And it was the source of all knowledge. And actually what it is, it's our higher self, but it's more than what we believe. I think a lot of us believe, it's just a higher part of me, which that's true, but the higher part of me connects with the higher part of everybody else, which is actually everything, because that's what I have in the book, is what this actually is. It's essentially God. Okay, so it's like you're communicating now. She figured out how to contact this part, and it comes through just about everybody. I mean, it's only ones that doesn't come through are the ones that are resisting you. So, I mean, the potential is there to come through everybody, because we all have that connection. So it's just connecting people to their true self and their true source. And so anyway, that's what's the meat of this technique, is how to do that. And then people can get all the answers to their questions, and they can have instantaneous healing, because that's what this does. It's the same thing energy work does, the same thing any of these things do. Once you can get to that part of you that doesn't resist and understands why all of this is happening, then you get healing.
How does love or gratitude figure into that space that you're getting the clients into?
Oh, that's what it is. That's really what it's all about, is accepting that and understanding that everything is from love. And the gratitude is from being grateful for whatever situation you had, whatever experience you had, you created that to learn from. So that's usually what they're saying, is be grateful for that and thankful for that. But then also when you get the healing, be grateful for the healing, and accept it, because so many times people they have a hard time believing that it can be that simple and be that fast. And
do you incorporate the senses into the healing?
Pardon?
Do you incorporate the senses into the healing, how a person experiences in their own mind?
Within a session?
Yeah. In other words, some people
absolutely.
are visual, some people aren't visual, some people feel.
Absolutely. And some people are, they're audible, and some are, they feel. Any sense, whatever way they can get their information, that's right for them.
So the quantum healing hypnosis was something that your mother developed and used on all of the people that she interviewed, right?
Yeah, she did, thousands and thousands and thousands of sessions. And then she started teaching it in 2002. They were telling her when they came through sessions, they said, you need to teach this. More people need this than you can.
Did you ever figure out, did they have a name?
No, they do not have a name. They said, she called it the subconscious, although some people confuse that with what the psychiatrists call the subconscious, and it's not at all it. It's just, they said, we don't have a name. You can call us the SC or subconscious, whatever you want. We'll work with you. We don't have...
her book, she called them the SC, so...
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you do tag somebody with the name, it gets very, it just creates more controversy.
Exactly.
Do you hear this as a voice or digitally?
Me, myself? Or what do you mean?
Or you. In other words, when you get they talk to you, are you hearing voices or are you hearing a thought?
It's more like hearing a thought, and it's a knowing.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And same with your mother?
She was just starting to hear it right before she passed. She was getting the messages, and she's like, oh, is this what it's like? I'm like, yeah. So she was starting to get it. Now, she would get it directly through sessions. See, it speaks through the person. So you're hearing...
so she would actually get most of her transmissions through her sessions through the other people, and I think it was wonderful because I think that was a lot of verification for her. Similar to what Edgar Casey was doing, is that she was able then to find out information about all the different times in history, all the different universes, all the different aspects of self and things like that through these people's experiences.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So you figure she talked to how many people? Thousands and thousands?
Oh, she did sessions on thousands and thousands of people. And then from those is where her books, they all came from that. And she has 17 out right now. We have 2 definitely she almost had finished, and so 1 is at the printer right now, and then that's the
what's it called? The one at the printer.
The Search for Hidden Sacred Knowledge, and we're hoping it will be out by the end of the month.
Oh, good. Okay.
And then the Convoluted Universe Book 5. She is it's very
5 books to talk about this convoluted universe.
I know, and that'll be out next year, probably summer. But she had those 2 almost completed. And then she has a wealth. I mean, she has a ton of information up there, so I'm going to, she's not done. I don't know, there's this knowing thing again. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen. I just know something's going to happen, and we're going to work together to get more of her material out. So I don't know how that will be, but.
So the sessions are all taped, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what was the theme? I mean, I think that one of the things that drew me in was that I had some of the same beliefs that she did in reading her material, and I always thought it was a little odd that I accepted it at face value. But back then when she was doing these interviews in the beginning and people started talking about, going out of their body and extraterrestrial lifetimes as different beings, reincarnation wasn't even accepted. I mean, it was still a pretty dark time in terms of having those ideas. What was it like for her to get those experiences coming through these patients and then also sharing it with others?
Yeah, it was interesting, and we've done a lot of that, of reflecting back on that of the last couple of years of her course and what she had to go through. I mean, she was a true trailblazer to have to do that. She was so ahead of her time. It took her 9 years to get her first book published. And that was why, because she was so ahead of her time. She sent the book in, and they didn't understand it. The publishers was, what are you talking about here? Yeah, in the Western world, no, we didn't know that. Now in the Eastern world, they believe in reincarnation forever. But over here, it's like, oh my goodness, what are you talking about? And she just couldn't get done, and so she just kept writing and writing and writing. And then finally, by the time the first publisher figured it out, and it was like the first one was coming around, she had 5 books written, and so that's why she had so many come out very quickly. But she just kept on. As far as, it was just started out real little. So when the book started coming out, then they started, they got it, and they started inviting her to places to speak, and so it was just those communities. She did have some resistance on some radio shows. She had some, extreme religious people come in and get upset with her. But she had the character to be able to handle that.
Yeah, one of the things the student mentioned to me, I said, what did you feel were the strongest points that you could mention about Dolores, because she spent, the 5 days there with her family, and she said her sense of humor, her ability to laugh.
Yeah.
At herself, and just to be, she was having fun, and she had joy, and she was funny, and, it made people comfortable, I think. Her energy was so smooth and demonstrated her compassion, and,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
she was very, very approachable. That's why a lot of people were surprised at her. They were always like, "Can I come up?" It's like she come on. She's just very approachable. She's very humble, no ego. She was just doing her work. This was what she was supposed to be doing, and that's all she was doing. And people, she was just always surprised at how much people were amazed by it.
Well, so tell me about, when she did these regression sessions, and people would, initially some of the, like you say, some of the topics were very controversial. I mean, for instance, extraterrestrials and multidimensional universes, and also, this transition that we're going through, this transmutation into the new Earth, the fifth dimension. Mm-hmm. People hadn't heard of those things before, right?
Right. Not at all. No, I mean, well, and it was so funny, let's see, less than 10 years ago, I went to a UFO conference that she was speaking at, and it was so funny because we have the book, The Custodians, and that's where, she was speaking to the ETs. I mean, we had people that had been visited, we'll call it visited because they don't like the word abduction. They've been visited, and they're on the craft, and they're scared and everything. So she just said, okay, is there anybody else there we can speak to answer our questions? And then that's where an ET would just start speaking through the person. And so here we have this book where we're communicating with ETs, right? Well, here you have a conference where they're still trying to decide do you think they're real? Do you think, all these things? And they're coming up to me, and I'm telling them about this book, and I glazed over. And that's the attitude that it was, but it's shifting now. Now they're coming around. Oh yeah, now you have people all the time speaking to ETs and doing everything. But back then it was like, who do you think you are? So it's like we're just still trying to figure out if they're real. Well,
yeah, actually, so
we're beyond that.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. So I just read The Custodians cover to cover, and honestly, like those interviews are very thought-provoking. I mean, for anybody that's interested, in a great place to start with Dolores Cannon's material, The Custodians is an awesome book. I mean, the regressions go right into these people's, well, you tell about it. I mean, it's a fascinating book to read.
Yeah, the regression, like I said, they're on the craft, and naturally they're scared because they don't know what's going on, because that's that conscious part of you. Just if it doesn't know something, it doesn't understand something, it's scared. It's going to be scared.
But didn't these people come to your mother like they got almost sent there from like a higher self or from some guidance to come to her to help them with manage the idea that they're actually being contacted and that they're spending time in a multidimensional out of body sort of atmosphere so that they could assimilate it? So that I think I read somewhere that they were actually sort of sent to her, like through some, sort of a spontaneous, it's like go to this website and this woman can help you kind
sure.
of thing.
That's more later. That's more later. Like that would be happen. Like the Convoluted Universe books have more people like that. The Custodians was more people. It may have had some of that. Because, I mean, the PR on the other side is fantastic for her work. And it's just always giving people's dreams and, okay, this book is out now, go get it, or you need to go see Dolores and have a session. We've had so many people call and say, who is Dolores Cannon and what's this session thing they're talking about? So they get something like in their subconscious, and then they wake up and they say, well, I need to follow up on this, right? Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, her earlier ones, they just had... maybe they had an experience that they wanted to explore, or there's something going on. They knew something happened, but they didn't remember it, and it was like the missing time, or there was just something, and it was bothering them, and so that's how she got involved in the whole part. But then later, it became where they were more consciously aware, and there was something going on, and they were being told or whatever. So, but that's part of the shift. As we start shifting in consciousness, we're more aware.
Right. So back then, with the custodian book, I mean, she was basically learning as she went along. Like, oh, well, who are these other beings, and how are they related to, ancient times, and how are they related to the Christianity, and how does this all sort of pull together? Like, she was putting it all together while she was doing the interviews. Is how I got the impression.
Yeah, absolutely. What happened was when they came through the very first time, and it's so exciting to hear her say this, and if I can find a video where she's done this, it's really cool. She said the first time that she made contact, where she asked, okay, can we ask one of them some questions? And then they came through and they said, something like, just a minute, we're checking, and in this very robotic voice, and then she could feel this energy moving through her. And they said, yeah, we're scanning. And like, yes, she's the one we can tell. What do you want to know? And she was like, well, you don't ask me what I want to know. I want to know everything. So they were just an open book. They're like, what do you want? And then one time she asked, well, why are you letting me have this information? And they said, well, we can't just give it to anybody, because it needs to go to somebody who's going to do something with it. And it's like, people need this information, so you're going to put it out there, so we'll give it to you.
Yeah, and I think they were also telling her when to sort of release things, too, when it made sense. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So these different, and from the book, I got the impression that these were all different ET groups. It wasn't just one particular one that were sort of guiding and talking and working together. We hear that there's a council, that there's councils, right?
Councils over everything. And it's very similar. These crafts are very similar to Star Trek and things like that, where you see them on these different shows. They have all these different types of ETs. I mean, that's it. They were written by somebody who knew. So, but that's exactly how it is. And you'd have all these different kinds of ETs that she'd be in communication with.
And so they were kind of laying the groundwork and preparing us for sometime in the future when there would be open contact.
Yeah, I mean, well, they're just like, they've been ready, and they've said, we want to talk. We're just ready for you to talk to us. And so it's for the right people. They tried the governments. That didn't work. And so now it's just with the people. It's like whoever's ready to communicate with them, they're ready.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How about you? Have you had contact with ETs?
I have. I did and that's how I actually, it confirmed that message. I was in England, and have you noticed these little, there's some stars out there that twinkle differently?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, those are not stars. I was in England, and my friend was like, we'd finished a show, and it was late at night, 2:00 in the morning, and he was like, look up there, see does that look right to you? And I looked up, I said, well, it's a star. And then I looked a little closer, I'm like, wait a minute, it's twinkling funny, it's twinkling red, green, and blue. It was like all these different colors. I'm like, well, that's not right. And so I was like, and then he got the intuitive message to get a camera and zoom in on it. So we got a couple of cameras, and we zoomed in, and we got this video on it. When we took it back to the computer and looked at it, it is so obviously a craft. And it's like, oh my goodness. So anyway, so I'm like, I was in doing the dishes, and I'm like, well, that's weird. If that's a craft, then what does that mean? Does that mean that something just happened? Or does that mean if I go back out, you're going to be gone? And I heard this, no. I'm like, well, then what are you? And they said, well, we're the guardians of the planet. And I'm like, so then I'm talking to them. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to them. I said, yes, we're ready to talk. We're ready. And then another time they said, we're ready to be seen by those who are ready to see us. See, it's stuff like that. And they're happy to, you just tap into them. And I haven't had any really intellectual talks. That was just the one time I tapped in, and I'll look up there every so often. I see the star. I'm like, yep, you're still there. So it's just, somebody else might say, oh yeah, you're hallucinating, you're kooky, but I just know.
Yeah. I mean, there's a knowing, and I think that the opening into the fifth dimension with the veil lifting is a personal thing. And it's surprising to me, like you mentioned earlier, how many of the people that study ufology and are interested in cosmic cultures really don't have a belief system around it, which totally fascinates me, because I've interviewed people like Stanton Freeman and Stephen Greer, and people that have really kind of talked about it a lot, but in their own minds, they haven't really, I think, made up their minds, that this is real, that this is what we're experiencing. This is a huge, momentous time being on the Earth plane, as we all sort of start to discover that we have multi-dimensional aspects going on. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because it's come up so much recently that it's got to be, I think, one of the next hot topics, is the concept of time. And I know that Dolores did write about this in the Convoluted Universe, but how do you feel it weighs in on our understanding of who we are and the sort of the dimension that we physically live in? I mean, how does time play a role in all that?
Yeah, it's a complex issue. I know Mom has said that they have told her that as long as we hold on to time, we will never fully understand how they operate and how everything works. I do know time's a construct of the 3D world, and the next dimension has no time. So you can kind of tell when you're slipping in and out of it. When you're in the times that there is no time, you can tell that it's like, I mean, you can definitely manipulate time. I think that's kind of like, I'm getting messages from them right now. It's like the lucid dreaming kind of thing. When you realize that you're dreaming, you can manipulate your dream. It's the same way. When you get to that point to where you can manipulate time, then see and same with, they're just jumping in here. It's all this co-creation stuff. It's all, as soon as you start realizing those things, you no longer are constrained by it. It's just a piece that you use. And so now it's like, okay, well, maybe time is a piece of this 3D world, but I'm going to use it the way I need it. And if I need more time, then I'm going to manipulate it. And so I can maneuver it to be however I need for whatever I'm doing. So there you go. That was from them. Okay.
Good explanation. That was simple enough that I think we could all understand it, So we can manipulate time even while we're here on the Earth plane.
Absolutely.
As we start to exist in a multidimensional kind of atmosphere, right?
Yeah, and it's really, really simple. Like so many times we're like, oh my God, I'm running late, I don't have enough time, Well, hey, we're powerful beings, we're powerful creators, and if you say that, you are creating that for yourself. I have no time, I'm really tight, it's all this. But as soon as you just go, wait a minute, I have plenty of time. I have all the time in the world to get everything done that I need. Well, see, then it's your words. Remember, your words create, and your thoughts create. And so as soon as you go to there, now you've manipulated it and you have all the time in the world. And all the events will start maneuvering so that everything gets done in perfect time.
So what do you mean when you say that outside of this dimension, outside of the 3D Earth, there is no time?
That's what we've been told. There's no time because it's just purely a construct of this dimension. Everything is in the now. In the other dimensions and in other realms, it's all just now. And so there's not a sense of how much time anything takes you. It just is. And so they're saying you've had this experience yourself. So where you're doing something and you get completely lost in it and you have no concept of time. See, that's what it's like. You're just being. You're just there, and you're in it. You don't, okay, I have this much time. I have to do this. I mean, so like the 8-hour workday will probably not be anymore. It'll just be. You'll be doing your tasks. It's whatever I'm doing. And then that's what's important, not the amount of time I'm spending on something. So it's like, it's that concept of time is what's apparently going to leave. I mean, I'm just as confused as anybody else. I mean, just because I just rattled the other thing doesn't mean I have it figured out. So
sounds like altered state of consciousness.
I think so. Yeah. Well, it's a different dimension, and so it would be a different level of consciousness, different dimension of consciousness. So yeah.
Yep.
Could be.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the people that we've talked to, in fact, several of them have said that the history is wrong, that what we consider Earth history is just, incorrect. I mean, what did your mom find out a lot, and have you found out a lot about the fact that we don't have it recorded correctly in our history books?
Oh, yeah. In fact, she was going to write a book, and I have to see if hopefully she has the material someplace where I can pull it together, but she was going to write this book called History the Way It Really Occurred. So, because things were written, right, it's not correct. It's our timelines, many of our timelines, as I'm finding now, just going around the world and just seeing things, they say, okay, well, this is what everybody says, this is what the experts say, but this is what it really is. But we can't say that because the experts will get angry because it undermines the whole records of everything, and so nobody will say anything. So,
well, like for instance, one of the things your mom found, and that you probably heard her talk about, is that there was, a planet that exploded, and that Mars was inhabited at some point in history. I mean, it's not just this planet that's wrong; it's the whole cosmos,
universe. Right. Yeah, our history in general. Yeah, it's all back there. Right, and that's where, well, they don't know. I mean, our history only goes back how far? It doesn't tell all of that, the whole ancient history. I mean, because ours just goes back thinking that this is it, and we know that there were many civilizations before us. There was Atlantis, there was Lemuria, but there were more before that. I mean, there were just many of them. So that went down. They got to this high level of technology, and then greed came in and corruption, and so that it all had to be destroyed. It went down. So we have reached this level many times before, and so it's like people just want to think, oh, we're it. Well, no, and then the same, you take that out then to the universe. The universe has been going through things for eons. So, I think for people to put this little cap on it, it's only been here this time, it's just so limiting, and it just shows where we come from. Did she ever come across this theory that there was a tribe called the Anunnaki that created some of the DNA that developed some of the current humans? Yes.
And that they were mining. Had a mining activity in South Africa, gold mining activities there.
Oh goodness, you're asking a specific thing, and I that sounds familiar. That sounds. She would only be the one that I'm thinking. I have heard her say something like that, but specifically what you're saying, I don't know for sure. But I do know, yes, the DNA. They took DNA and put it with the apes, with the monkeys, and that's how they created man. They said you will never find the missing link because it doesn't exist. It just went, they did it. It happened in their labs. And so, yeah. And that's how they seeded the earth.
Yeah, and I think we have I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I'm just going to say, back to earlier conversation, can you imagine being there in that design?
Wouldn't that have been cool? Maybe I was. I don't know.
Well, it might be something you might consider sometime, not on air, but just went back and see.
Well, one of the things, that I know that it's come out too in your work is that the concept of our reality can shift drastically at some point, So I think, and one of the things that Michael often asks people is, what was that tipping point for you? Like you personally, do you have a moment in time where you all of a sudden, like you said, you were kind of in the corporate world, you were doing your thing as a nurse, you had a different life, and then all of a sudden it's like the universe is knocking at your door saying, wake up.
What was the 2x4?
Yeah, that 2x4. Like, what was that moment that kind of really woke you up?
It was oh boy.
That loaded question?
You can share as little as you want,
Yeah, it's probably one that I will tell in full detail at some point. It's not really the what that happened that was so important. It's that something happened, and I want to tell people that things do happen. Bad things happen. It's not what that's so important. It's how you react to it. And what it was showing me and what I got from it was, because, yeah, my life ceased to exist. It was gone. Everything was gone. I lost everything. I lost my career. I lost my home. I lost everything. It was just completely annihilated. And I was plucked out of there, and I was, just put in over here. And I went kicking and screaming, obviously. I mean, I was being ripped from my life. And so, and it took a time that I had to go through. And during that process, that's when I was realizing, because it's like, what is going on? I was reading things, like one of our authors, O.T. Bonnet, I was kind of helping with some of the books here, because I'm like, I don't know what to do. And some mom's like, well, help some things here. And so one of the books that came out was by him, and he was talking about sometimes that happens to people, and when it does, it's like it has to rip everything away from you, take you down to your core, so you know who you really are, and you know that you're not your things and your attachments and your station in life and your career. You're not all that stuff. It's who you really are, because that's all you're left with. And so I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. So I think that kind of started me looking at that. Okay, so who am I, and what's this all about, and what are you trying to tell me? And because I had gotten just enough of little things, it was like I started looking, because that's what that does. That stuff like that shakes you awake, and it makes you start reevaluating and what's going on, and looking at yourself, and why would this happen to me? You go from a why me to because that only works for so long. Victimness only works a little while, and I didn't want to be a victim, and so I shifted, and it's like, okay, so what am I going to do with this? And then I started going, well, why did this happen? And it was just you had to get it out. And then when I started doing more at the book, that's when it became more obvious what was going on and why everything happened. And there's still parts of it I'm still understanding. So I
think this unfolding and this awakening is happening to a great number of people, and we call them the wanderers. I think I think 53 million wanderers on the planet that are here to, sort of help manifest the transmutation into the fifth dimensional world, and are doing so many things, opening fifth dimensional hospitals, like in universities, like what you're talking about, and, spreading the light in whatever way possible for them, whatever that means for them. And so, I got hit on the head pretty hard myself. We can, we can share stories, but Michael got hit by a car.
Oh, yeah, those are major 2x4s, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that awakening is the blessing from all of that, but for many it doesn't come that easy. I mean, it's what you call, I guess, a rude awakening, or that 2x4 that you're talking about, because it's so hard to remember why we're here. And I don't get that. There's a veil. It's so hard sometimes to kind of clear that and figure out, what am I doing here, right?
Absolutely. When that, I figured out now, because I realized at the time I was getting messages to leave what I was doing. And I got like 4 messages over the course of 2 years. It kept saying, get out of here, go, you're supposed to do a healing center. And I kept going, a healing center? And because I had a home health agency, and I'm like, well, that's, so I was getting the messages, and I actually put the company up for sale, and I was trying to do it, but I was getting out of my comfort zone by doing that, and that made me uncomfortable. And
right,
so
because you need retirement money, and you need to pay bills, and you need to have insurance.
Exactly.
And you need right, I know. Believe me, it's hard to
so
leave all that. And
so
then plus, what are people going to think about me? What's my reputation?
Absolutely. And so then I go back. So that's why, I got 4 messages, and then the last message was in. It was like, so I think there was like this window that, and I know it was all coming from me, because my higher self, that was all guidance from myself. Okay, you've got this much time to shift, probably, as I can get going in this direction. And when I wouldn't do it, then it was like, okay, and I probably had a directive, okay, and just as you did, and just as Michael did, okay, you're not moving. We got to get this show on the road here, and so you have to do something drastic. And
the sad part for a lot of people is that they never quite get what happened. It's like if you're a record or a play, the needle just skipped. Now, everybody else knows you're different, but you're not quite sure. The world has changed, but you're not the way you were. It's like your mental DNA is kind of hyperwaft a little bit. So everything is completely different than it was before. And making that adjustment, it's very interesting the way it goes.
Yeah, and yeah, it's not easy. No, it is an adjustment. And like I said, and I resisted mine all the way through. I still find myself sometimes kicking and screaming and you know, it's like, I am so stupid. Why are you doing that? Will you just let go and accept? Because my goodness, look at what you're doing. So
yeah, and one of the things you just mentioned, letting go, is huge, because I know that when I talk to people that connect to the Pleiadians, they say we hold on to everything. We hold on to all of our traumas and all of our wounds and all of our lifetimes and all, you know, we hold on so much that it creates a lot of blocks for us.
yeah,
And that makes it harder for us to align with the energy of the now and the heart energy, you know.
right.
It helps us stay in fear, which is where we don't want to be. So the letting go is just huge, you know, but teach someone how to do that, you know. How do you let go?
Well, exactly. Exactly. And that's not easy. And that's, but it really is letting go of the fear, because it's usually fear is what's holding you to hold on to something. It's the fear that something, because everything will change once you let go. You're afraid or you're going to drop. But that was one of the things I did when I was going through this whole process, was I found myself holding on so tight to something. And so etherically I was looking at it, and I was like holding on to a buoy in the water. And I was like, and something kept saying, well, just let go. What would happen if you let go? And I was talking to myself that way. Well, what would happen if I let go? And I said, you just float.
Float in the sea of light, the sea of light.
Exactly.
Your own river of light. Well, Julia, we are going to take a very short break for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll be back for the second hour. We're going to talk more to Julia Cannon, author of Soul Speak, and daughter of Dolores Cannon, about their new university and Ozark Mountain Publishing. We'll be right back. Good afternoon. This is Debbie West on Lost Knowledge, and today we are talking to Julia Cannon. Julia is the daughter of Dolores Cannon and the author of Soul Speak. She is the co-founder of Ozark Mountain Publishing, and is talking to us today about the work she's been doing there and the new metaphysical university that will be that is going to be opening there in Arkansas. Julia, I wanted to just say that on the website there are so many tributes to your mother. There's just countless people that whose lives she touched in such a profound way. People from all over the world were posting their condolences when she passed, and I myself did the same thing. The outpouring is amazing. And I think the message that comes through the strongest from all of these is that her light will continue to shine here. She's left a path for all of us. She was a brave pioneer, bringing out messages of truth to help us share knowledge freely, which is, I think, one of the biggest disgraces that's been going on in the last, during this particular time on Earth, where we've, been able to suppress knowledge. So, just wanted to make mention of that, of all the, comments and support that you've probably gotten there since her passing.
Oh yeah, it's been overwhelmingly beautiful. It's been fantastic. The love, the outpouring of love is just so fantastic, but it's very overwhelming as well. It's just, but yeah she, that's what I was saying. We had, she was just doing her job. She was doing her work, and she loved what she did, and just wanted people to get the information. And she was just so curious. That's why she kept asking questions and getting the information. And then she wanted people to have the information. And then she wanted people to know how to help people and help themselves. So she was just doing what she was here to do. And but yeah, it's been amazing. it's so amazing, all the wonderful, wonderful messages of love that have been coming in, and how she touched everybody. So yes, we've all been crying for days in here as we would read everything. It's just been amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the books that she's written, I mean, the one, I think the first book that she put out was the one about the 5 lives.
That was the first book she wrote. It actually didn't get published till much later, just actually a few years ago, because it was so ahead of its time. By the time when people were accepting, I mean, when she could get it published, then she was like, well, I think it's too simple now, and people don't want this book. And it was like, no, this needs to be told, because this is her story, how she began, and everybody was wanting to know. And so we put it out, and it's really, really important, because you can see exactly where she came from, and how she started, and then how this whole world started for her, and then brought her to where she is.
So that was like people who came to her, and she was discovering information that was a little bit beyond our current level of understanding, but it was becoming so real to her that she knew she had to press on.
Well, you mean for that book, that specific
when
book?
she was first doing those regressions with her first patients. They did, I guess you call them clients, but didn't your dad actually do
Yes.
start out doing hypnotic regressions, and
Yes.
and that's kind of what got it all started?
That's what got it all started, and that's what's told in the 5 Lives Remembered. He's the hypnotist in that one. He is, so actually it's a tribute to him. He was the one that started. He learned hypnosis when they were stationed in the Philippines. He was a career Navy, and he was very good at it. And so this was a client that he had when he was stationed in Texas. He was helping servicemen. He would work with them like they're being deployed back to Vietnam or something, and they were scared to death. And so he was helping them and working with them to get them to calm down, and so that they could, go and be okay. And anyway, and so everybody knew that he was doing this. He was just doing hypnosis. It was just plain old hypnosis, for habits and helping you relax, things like that.
Uh-huh.
And then the military doctor on the base had this woman that had a severe nervous eating disorder, and so she was very much overweight, and she was having a lot of problems because of that, kidney problems and things. And so he was like, maybe if we could just get her to relax, then maybe she would be okay. And so he asked my father if he would do that. Well, my mother just assisted my father. She was there. She would hold the microphone, and she would be writing notes and things like that, and be kind of, helping my father with maybe some questions. And, she was just a support person. And so anyway, they took this woman back. They're just going back in this life, and she's back when she's a little baby. And then all of a sudden he's like, okay, well, let's go back a little further. And all of a sudden she's in a life in the Roaring 20s. In Chicago, and they're like, what just happened? And because nothing, I mean, in this world, there was nothing out there to, that this just happened spontaneously. And they're going, but both of them have a curiosity. And they're not afraid of things. So they were just like, well, okay. And they just went along with it. Well, let's just see what's going on. And so ended up, over the course, this is over months and months of work, could this happen? I mean, sure, her situation was taken care of, but now they've got something else they're working on here. So they're doing all these sessions, and they end up going through 5 lives back to when she was created. She went back to source. So all of this was mind-blowing. And what I love about this book, I mean, she was saying, oh, it's so simple, but when I read it, it was like, oh, my goodness. There's a walk-in in there. And there was at one point she's on the spirit side, and she's doing all these things as a spirit guide, and then she goes back to source. And there were some things that are in the Convoluted Universe books. I mean, all these things, there were threads of it throughout there, and this is way back in the beginning.
And this was all from this one particular client that they were doing the regressions with.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So they already had kind of tapped into the knowledge, the information, and then going on and on and on and proving it over and over and over with so many different clients, right?
Right. Because then, like after that happened, my father was in a severe accident, and he almost lost his life. And he was in the hospital for a year, so that stopped that. That was as far as that could go. And then when he got out of the hospital, he retired. We retired here to Arkansas. So that shifted. So there's another. See, that's those 2x4s again. Shift your course of life. So we're up here, and so she's been all this time taking care of him, taking care of us. Because when they first started all that, like I was 10 or 11, I think, somewhere in there. So now, 10 years go by, and or whatever it is, and we're all going to college, getting married, doing our various things. And so now she's like, okay, empty nest syndrome. What am I going to do now?
How many are there? 4 of you?
There's 4 of us.
Yeah. And she has something like 14 grandchildren?
Oh, goodness. No, I think it's 17 grandkids. She could tell you exactly. I don't remember. There's a lot.
Big family, though. Yeah.
Big family, yeah. So anyway, so she's like, well, what do I do now? And she's like, I really enjoyed doing that hypnosis. That was time travel. I really enjoyed that. So that's when she started looking at it again and looking at the new methods of hypnosis, and that's when she started, creating her own. And so and then she started, people just came to her. So
did you know what was going on as you grew up? I mean, did you know what your parents were doing?
I knew of it. I was going to school, and I think I heard some of the recordings, and I knew about it. I mean, my mother she's probably one of the original readers of Fate magazine, so we've always believed in the unknown and the unusual. We've always been open-minded. I think that was helped by us being military and moving all the time. We weren't just, positioned in a small town and took on all the thoughts, patterns, and things like that. We were all over the world, so we, were open. We were raised to be open, and and we lived in St. Louis. We had a haunted house. We lived in a haunted house. So it's like we were around this stuff. None of it was unusual, and so they were doing that, and I'm like, okay, it's like this is just something new. So
yeah. Yeah. So, any of your other siblings involved in the work at all?
One of my sisters is working here with the company. She's running the publishing arm of the company, and the other 2, they have their own lives. They're in other places. So, but we all believe in this. I mean, they're all intimately into it. It's not like any one of us are going, "Oh, what is she doing?" It's not like that.
Yeah. So a few minutes ago you mentioned walk-in, and we've actually done some work with walk-ins. And what's your take on that? What do you think a walk-in really is?
Okay, a walk-in, by my mother's definition and what she was told by through the sessions, is you have a situation where, okay, the person is in their life and they're just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't, it's just too much for me. I took on too much. It's more than I can do. And they are completely exhausted, whatever. And they're just, I want out. But they don't want to commit suicide. That's not the way. So this it's an agreement they make on the other side with another soul that knows them. And as the other soul is willing to trade places and take on all of their karma. They have to take on everything and finish all of their stuff out before they can proceed with their own stuff that they want to do. So it's an agreement. It's not something taken lightly, I'll just pop out and you can pop in. I mean, this is heavy duty stuff because this one's got to take over your stuff. And so, and sometimes it's agreed before you ever came in, but most of the time it's something that you just get to a point. It's like, I did too much. I can't do this. I just can't do this. And so and then a lot of times what will happen is you will have a situation to where you are either very ill or you're in the hospital. Something's happened to where the switch can be made, and then people, because they may notice a little difference in you for a while, and they'll blame it on that situation. It's like, you've always been a little different since this happened or something like that, but they can blame it on something. they won't go, yeah, something else came in, you know. But it's just.
So how did she come about this? Were there people that came in that had a walk-in experience?
Yes. Her book, Keepers of the Garden, the person, oh, wait a minute, I take that back. That's a different term. This is in the Between Death and Life. She has some walk-ins in there, and that was the first one that she had like that. She just had some clients. That's what they said. This is what happened. They told her the whole story, you know, because they went back and like they had their story here, but then when they went under, it only went back to a certain point, and they're like, well, this is what happened. You know, we traded places, and they told the whole story. So, I mean, yeah, she's had several of them. It's not very common. Some people, oh, you know, they have conferences even, oh, you know, for this and stuff, and it's like those are, I think some of that's being glorified. It's not done commonly. It's not a very common thing.
Okay, and so let's get into some of the other things that have, and is your book and all of her books published through Ozark Mountain Publishing?
Yes.
So some of the other subjects that she got into are very, like you say, can be considered controversial. And the two of the books, They Walked with Jesus and Jesus and the Essenes, you know, they sort of question, they talk a little bit about religion, right?
Right. They talk about what Jesus was really here to do, and it had nothing to do with religion. In fact, it was, you know, religion, that's just where man took the teachings and put their own spin on it so they could control people. So it's like, in that way, she was really nervous about it. But it's,
right. So what is she saying? Like basically that that we misinterpreted all of it, and that we're still buying it. We're buying the garbage that we were given back during the biblical times and afterwards, and that we need to sort of shed all that.
Yeah, it's basically, you know, really, the only thing is love, and it's just, you know, everything Jesus taught was love. If you look at it, it's all about, you know, anything I can do, you can do, and that's where we all have these abilities. We want to deify him. He was never meant to be deified. He was just a person, and that's what those books do, is they show him as the human, you know, and it's really wonderful to see him as a peer rather than this glorified being that we could never, you know, we have to look up to him. We can't be him. And that's what he was trying to teach is, he was just showing us how he's trying to break us off of the wheel of karma, you know, just start thinking about what you're doing, be accountable, be in control of your life, you know, and that's where we're at now.
So is he a light caster?
He was, well, what he was he had been finished. He didn't have to come back. He came back, maybe he was a light shower for sure. So he was a light something.
And they say that he was incarnated before the time of Jesus as a different entity, right?
Yeah, I don't know specifically the lineage there, but I've heard that, yes, that he was, you know, he had many lifetimes before, but he was done now. And when he came back as Jesus or Yeshua, that was to help people get off the wheel of karma, but they weren't ready for it at that point. There were some, and those are the ones that were following him, and then but it was supposed to be that, you know, he and the disciples, they had this whole other teaching that they were going around and doing, and it was called the Way, and that's where it's just teaching love, and but all of that it just wasn't ready. It all got distorted when he was killed. Then they just, you know, made him a god, and, you know, yeah.
And who were the Essenes?
The Essenes were the ones that, the missing years of the Bible, they don't know what happened to Jesus, the missing years in there, and that's where Jesus was. He was with the Essenes, and they were teaching him. So see, everybody thinks Jesus was teaching everybody. No, this is who he learned from. And so he was just a very advanced soul because he was already, you know, developed. And so he learned very quickly. But he went through all these places, but he was with in these mystery schools with the Essenes learning all these things. So when he came out, and that's where all of a sudden we have this person that can do all these things, was because he just come out from these schools where he was taught all of this.
Right. So now are we going to have schools where everybody can learn and everybody can be of a fifth dimensional nature and have this light casting ability just like he prophesized?
Absolutely. And that's really the main theme of this next book, The Search for Hidden Sacred Knowledge, is it used to be, this knowledge used to be for the elite few to know and understand, or the ones that could understand it, where now that's not the case. It's for everybody. It's whoever wants it can have it, and because, then we can just all grow and enlighten and do it at our pace and not be governed, by somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Michael, are you still there?
I am still there, and listening to this with a lot of interest in that. What do you consider to be, this is my next question leading off that, what do you consider to be the core of the universe? Is there a grand design?
The core of the universe, basically, it's have experiences. When we shot out from the source, we were little sparks of light. When the source or God, whatever you want to call it, shot out and said, I want to know more. I want to know everything. I want to, I've got to. It's a creator. This being I'll call it it for right now because I don't know, what else to call it. Went out and said, okay, go and learn. So in that learning, there's all kinds of ways to learn. So there's through creation and everything, you have these experiences. Ultimately, that's the core of everything. And just we have various ways that we go about it. And it's just now we're coming back to realize that we are the ones that created everything to learn from, to see. So it's like we're thinking that we had all this done to us, and it's like, no, we are the ones that did it so that we could have all these experiences. And when we have these experiences, they all go back to the source. So then source creates even more. So it's like it's just a perpetual movement where we keep contributing back and forth. And I guess that's why they call it co-creation.
I agree totally with that. It's like in the beginning, all the knowledge is there, but the experiences aren't. And so in the process, when we go back to one, then it becomes a balance as a whole. How about twin flames?
Okay. I just know what I've heard. I don't know that Mom's gotten a lot of information on that. All that they've told her is like a lot of people are looking for their soulmate, and they said, that may not necessarily be what you want to do because you might not learn as much because you're so blissfully happy, you just kind of stop. As far as twin flames, I think sometimes that's just where, like, maybe when you started, it's just where that splintered off. It's just another part of yourself. And
yeah,
so
it's like the perfect balance between male and female, and when it divided into physical form, then it became two that had the connection, one male, one female. Mm-hmm. Does that ring a resonance?
Yeah, it does. It does.
So I won't press you on that because I think we're saying the same thing. But one other question is, so do you communicate with something on a consistent basis?
Yes. My higher self, my real me.
And how do you communicate?
I just think. I just talk to it. And it like you said before, is like, how do I hear it? And it was really hard to describe because it's not like I hear something talking in my ear. It's not like it's a voice, although it is, but I think the most correct or the best definition or the best explanation was hearing a thought, because that's how it feels. That's how it sounds. And for a while, it wasn't my voice. Now it seems to be my voice. And that someone said that was because I integrated it. So does that mean something?
Yeah, so like for me, like I get these things when I'm asleep, a subconscious nudge or something, and then I'll wake up at whatever time, sometimes 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and then it becomes reality to me. So it's when you're in a sort of a subconscious trance is when that information can process sometimes until you can integrate it. So you maybe got to the point where you can integrate it simultaneously in real time, in waking time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because there's a big difference between sleep time and wake time, only in that we turn off the mind chatter, I think, you know, so that we can actually hear ourselves.
Well, absolutely. And what's been said, like in the Convoluted Universe books, they'll say the dreamer dreams a dream, and they'll say, actually, and I think this is even said in the American Indian tribes, they'll say, like, they walk, you know, the sleep state, that's the reality. The waking time, this time here is an illusion. So this is actually the dream. And we have it backwards. We're thinking this is when we're awake. When we're in dream time, that's more of the reality of what it really is. And then we're creating from that point to here. And that just sounded really convoluted, didn't it?
Yeah, because it is convoluted. So tell me about so there's 5 books now that all talk about the convoluted universe. But how did those books come about? Was it through sessions with clients that this was all sort of put together?
Yes. She would have clients. These are from hundreds of clients, different clients all around the world. And she would get, you know, a piece of information, let's say here in Arkansas, a session that she did here with someone. And then she'd go to England and do another session with somebody else entirely. And then all of a sudden she'd get more of that same piece. They just drop in more information. She's getting stuff all from all over the world, all these different people.
And they're all saying the same things.
All saying the same thing, but they were just different pieces to the same puzzle. And so her job was to put this puzzle together and all these pieces and parts. But all of that gave confirmation because it was the same information coming from all these different people. And so she's like, there must be something to this.
Oh my God, how fantastic is that, though? What a great way for us to learn. You know? And I'm glad she was here to do that.
And I'm glad she had the mind that she did. I mean, she was so curious and she was so like that. She just wanted to know, and things like that made sense. She knew when something was a piece. You know, she just had a really clever mind.
Yeah. So she was able to put these puzzle pieces together and come up with what was being told to her through these different sessions of what the reality is that we're actually experiencing in our incarnations.
Right.
So what?
At first it started out, she just wanted to know about everything. So she was doing all the myths and all of the ancient civilizations and all the things she'd ever heard about. And then gradually it started coming into different concepts. And she's like, whoa, wait a minute, I don't know if I can handle this. You know, you're going to have to help me understand this. And that's where they just give her little pieces, and then they give her analogies that she could help explain them. But then that would be, you know, like for one book, and then then it just kept going on. And it was very obvious early on that this was going to be an ongoing series.
Yeah, so you know, because we all whether we're scientists or archaeologists or, you know, rich, poor, healthy, sick, you know, whatever, we all are here for the same lessons. And so it can boil down to just an understanding that goes across the entire soul group, you know, the entire oversoul of Earth. And then we can raise up our consciousness to the next level of understanding, which, you know, because it builds. And I think that's one of the things that she was able to convey was just, you know, on a very simplistic level, is that there's no fear here, that there's no, you know, that taking away the reality that you think that you exist in doesn't need to be as, I guess, as much of a trauma as some people would view it. You know, it seems like you and I had an easier time with it. I mean, as far as, you know, okay, you're going to do this for sure, you know. But some people waver. They're on the verge, but they don't quite have the catalyst to push them out there, right? So I think the book can help you by reteaching you in a gentle way without the, you know, the big, you know, slap across the head. It's like, okay, it's just a little different than what you thought. It's different than what you've been taught.
Absolutely.
It's all good, though. It's not scary. I mean, these extraterrestrials, these other civilizations, these other universes, these parallel lives, the existences that you have in a multidimensional reality are all part of your own making.
Your own making for your own experiences. That's the core, like Michael was saying, that's the core thing, is you are having experiences. You are here having experiences. This earth was created to provide us with a certain type of experience, and that one shrouded heavily in fear. So that was something that we wanted to work on and understand, was how we don't have to do that, to work through that. And it's taken a long time to work through the notion of fear. You know, it's only here on Earth. It's just a 3D construct, just like time is. And so once we realize that it's part of the Earth, it's not part of us, it's not part of who we are, it's just part of this 3D game. And so at that point, you know, you look at it differently. It's like, I don't have to play that part of the game. You can manipulate that too. It's just another thing I can use, or I can just say, you know, it's not my world. And that's because it's solely here as a distraction. It's something to tie you up until you realize it's not real, because it's totally not real. And just like time isn't real, but we believe it. See, until time is something we totally created. Fear is something we totally created. As long as you buy into it and you believe it, then it's real for you. But the point that you stop believing in it, it's not real anymore. And it no longer has that hold on you.
Do you, man, I've got to get my head, I get following you and then I get off in some space and it takes me a while to get back.
We're off in another dimension.
Apologize for that. But you have such a wonderful way of looking at things. Do you think that we're a part of a transition team? Is there a group of souls here that are all working together, even though they may not realize they're connected, to help in this transition?
I do. You know, one of the books that Mom wrote was The 3 Waves of Volunteers in the New Earth. And that's all about these souls that were coming in waves. There's like 3 different waves of them that are coming in and have come in to help raise the vibrations, and is to help of consciousness and of the earth and everything, so that it can help shift everybody. But beyond that, because it's almost like that was created like this special group. I'm not saying I'm a volunteer. I've gone through sessions. I have other lives, but I also had a session where I'm on a ship somewhere, you know, in a suspended animation. So it's like that's part of that multiple dimension things, multiple lives within dimensions. And so it's more than just simply, okay, there's some of you that are here doing this and some of you that aren't. I think there's many on many different levels doing things. So if you may not be a volunteer, but you may be still part of a group that's here still doing things. I mean, I think it's more, you know, we can't just simply say, and I'm not discounting what you're saying at all, Michael, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying I've seen what people tend to do with this book and this information, and they've gone, oh, I'm one of the waves, you know, and it's like, well, you may very well be, you probably are, but it's like, it's not discounting those that aren't, you know, because they're all playing their part here. And so I think as everything raises, then we start tapping into these other parts of ourselves. And that brings in this other knowledge where then we are able to do even more. So I don't know. I do believe, yes, there's a group that has come, or several groups or whatever that have come to do all of this. But then in the process, maybe it's opened the door for even more.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sort of like living. Yeah, it does. It's sort of like living in more than one dimension at once.
Yes. Absolutely.
I mean, it's like I'm walking around and sometimes like there's another head over my head. You know, it's kind of like, well, okay, I'm looking at this in a couple of different ways here.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. And that's, see, when you're doing that, how can time be in there?
No, it kind of disappears.
Exactly.
It's funny that when you mentioned the Ways of Volunteers, because I had forgotten about those books, but those are amazing books. I mean, it kind of chronicles what was happening over the last, 2 decades. And this was all prophesied by Edgar Cayce, Nostradamus, the Hopi, the Mayans. I mean, we've been hearing and talking about this time for so long. And then Dolores was able to come in and actually chronicle it. I mean, we are experiencing something in the no time that we came here to do as souls, and that was to be a part of the biggest transmutation that's ever happened, which is becoming light casters in human form. And so like that shift is huge all over the universe, and there's so many people watching. There's so many life forms and life form, energies that are involved that it's hard to, like, when you were saying that, Julia, I was following you, and I was like, it's so hard to, like, put the words around it because it's holographic, right?
Absolutely. That's
and
why
it becomes, the words just become, very limiting when the human language becomes very limiting when you're talking, about this multidimensional holographic experience. But it's pretty interesting that I think that that you have archives there of the information that is going to sort of catapult us all into, a greater understanding of it.
That is exciting.
I know. So, what kind of events do you have coming up? I know that there's workshops and events that people can participate in. If you kind of you guys got organized there where you have a schedule of things that are coming up?
We do. And we have our UFO conference in Eureka Springs. So that's an annual event. That's coming up in April. It's the second weekend in April. I think it's the 10th to the 12th. That's the longest running UFO conference in the U.S. Maybe.
What do you do? Do you have speakers there?
We have speakers, and it's on the UFO topic. We inherited this conference a couple of years ago from the late Lou Farish. After he passed, the people that were taking it, they were like, they were wanting to retire, and so they said, but they don't want it. They said, if you don't take it, it'll be gone. And so we couldn't see that happen because we were very dear friends with Lou. And so we took it on and have kept it going, trying to keep it in the pure light that he was running it. And so that's, we have speakers.
So who do you have coming this year for the conference?
We have Richard Dolan so far. Well, we have confirmed Richard Dolan and Barbara Lamb and Peter Davenport, Nikki Patillo, and we have several that we're still in looking at them. We should have that.
That sounds so much fun.
We should have that finalized here in the next week or so.
Okay, and we can look for that on the website.
On the website, ozarkmt.com, and usually there's usually a link from DoloresCannon.com to that as well.
From either one, okay.
Mm-hmm. And then in the summer, it'll be in July, we have our Transformation Conference. And that's, anyway, it's on the website. I don't have the exact dates, but it's in the middle of July. Mm-hmm. And we have our authors. We feature our authors. We'll have a keynote speaker, and we feature our authors. And we don't have that one. That one's just forming, so I don't have the speakers all confirmed for that one yet. But it will be it actually will have its own site, and we'll have a link. Well, both of those have their own sites, and we'll have links over to them.
And that's in Arkansas?
It's in Springdale, Arkansas, so it's all right here in the Ozark area. Yes, we keep it all local.
Right, come where we're at. Yeah, fun
Absolutely.
Place.
And then we have the QHHT classes. We have those online. We have level 1 online. So it's anytime you want to take it. And then we're also going to do 2 live classes this year where I'll be doing it with Mom. So this will be interesting because I've always been doing it.
Describe that. What do you mean by that?
Well, we had recorded her class, obviously, for the online class. And so what we're going to do is take some parts of it where she'll be teaching it, and then I'll teach along, I'll alternate with her, and I'll do some parts.
That is so cool.
So we'll just kind of bounce back and forth, and we'll have...
That's like, when they did the Oscars and they had people singing, like, with their father, holographically, they were creating, like, this duet with them. Did you ever see that?
I didn't see it, but I've heard about it, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that is so cool. I love that.
Yes.
So you and Dolores will be teaching 2 live classes.
Right, the live classes, and that one's in March, and then one will be in... let's see here, in later, like in the fall. We don't have that. Yeah. They're lining up. They'll be on the DoloresCannon.com site as we do.
And those are also in Arkansas.
They're in Arkansas.
Okay.
And then I'll be going around the world to various places doing level 2 classes. Those are classes to help hone the skills even more of the people that have taken the training, to give them, even more so that they can be even better at their trade.
Now, I've heard that the class information has already been translated into Chinese and Spanish.
Yes, we almost have it completed, so our online classes should be available within the month in those languages as well as English. So we're really excited about that. And then we have
Chinese. That's pretty cool, right?
Oh, it's fantastic. And then we've got someone working on Dutch, and then we'll probably have traditional Chinese and Japanese out within a few months as well. Mm-hmm. So, and then Russia is going to be right behind them. And so,
oh my gosh, I love it. What about light languages? I've had people on the show that talk light languages, and the kids are talking them, like the fifth dimensional, the new root race. I mean, they apparently are talking to each other in these new languages that we don't have yet. I mean, anyway, so it's all so exciting. There's so much happening. I mean, the Earth is just shifting into this new vibration so quickly, and I think we're all hands on deck right now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, they just anybody and everybody. That's what I was thinking of a while ago when you were talking about these groups. What came to me when you were talking, Debbie, was this vision, and they were saying that we had these groups that were coming, but actually everybody that's here on Earth during this whole process chose to be here. It's like being on the front seat of the roller coaster ride. You want to be here. And so it was not easy to get tickets to be here at this time because this is so phenomenal. We knew what was going to happen, and we wanted to be here, and we fought to be here. So, I mean, we ought to do our job.
I know. And we ought to do it with love and gratitude.
Absolutely.
I know.
And excitement, not kicking and screaming.
Right.
Rather than ought to, you may.
Yes.
Ought to,
that very
too
good.
Authoritative. If you give yourself permission to take the risk of succeeding,
Absolutely.
One step at a time.
Absolutely. Thank you for that reminder.
It's my neuro-linguistic background.
Yeah, so lots of exciting things. So, and I'll write this up too, that, go to ozarkmt.com or dolorescannon.com and find out a lot of the new information. As we've been talking about all these books, there's a dozen books out. There's also Soul Speak by Julia Cannon. It's a little overwhelming, but it really, I think that when you start tapping into this information, if it starts to ring true, it's a good way to get this knowledge passed on to family members too, because and that's one of the things I was going to ask you about, Julia, because I have a daughter in medical school and a son that's a chemical engineer who, I think they're watching, and they're in their mid-20s, so they're watching me. I'm another one, a younger one, 19, who's at University of Texas, wants to be a nurse or a healer. But I think that they're all sort of watching us the same way that maybe you watched your own mom, right?
Absolutely. My daughter, too, she went through forensics, had a master's in forensics, and she's a DNA scientist now. And she's helped my mother do the classes. And I'm like, she's going down this traditional road. I think that's just something that you do. But then you also look at what they're doing. These are things that they know from their past, that these are skills that they're just resonating with, that they are bringing from somewhere else. And so anyway, they're going to go through that, but they're watching. Yes, they're watching, and they're also open. They're waking up. And my daughter, we have conversations all the time because, their worlds that they're in are really dense for the most part. And so, but you see what they've done. Ooh, they're showing me what they did. They've taken them and they put them in there, and then they have the connections to us where we can feed them more light, and they can shed light into those areas. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know, and it's going to be amazing for that. I think that they're going to wake up. I know that I have 4 children, and my other daughter was very open, and she still remains very open, but she's got a business degree, so she's pursuing sort of a straight and narrow financial path. But at the same time, I think she knows that what we're talking about also makes sense. That that we're going to be pioneering into space. That we are a multidimensional race with many connections throughout the universe, and that, all of those aspects of what we, sort of the old paradigm, the shifting of the old paradigm into the new, you have to understand where you have been to figure out where you're going, right? So,
Right.
So they
But
create
also,
this understanding in the old paradigm, but they actually have a big role because they're shifting. They're the shift leaders. I mean, they're going to make the transition, guided transition into this new world.
Absolutely, because see, they'll be in those roles, and they'll be able to be in those roles and still have this other understanding, where in our generation or the generations before us, it couldn't be that way. And so, see, we were like this transitionary point, and they're transitioning it even more, where they can be there. Now, they won't necessarily be talking about it on a daily basis, but they'll live it. They'll be within their framework. And so they'll do this work from a different place. Yeah.
The amazing ones, the crystal ones that have been born after 2000, boy, they really have a knowing.
Yes.
Well, and also I think one of the things is that, and I don't know if your mom ever ran into this, but one of the things that troubles people as they wake up is that they don't stay grounded. And they also travel all over the universe unprotected. Did she ever mention that to you? Because that's been one of my pet peeves, is don't run around talking to everybody you meet on an astral plane and go out there and feel like you can join into other people's vibrations, because you might lower your own. Like, you have to be conscious of what you're doing, even more so, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because sometimes when they first wake up, we call them they're like born again Christians, and they're just wanting to tell everybody, tell the world, and do all this. And it's like, no, you still have to have your this framework of, or maybe that's not the right word, saying you have to, but it just seems to it feels better, it works better if you have this framework of, like you said, coming from a grounded and using common sense, and it's not. Not everybody is ready for it, and you just have to meet people where they are, and then you just feel them out, and then if they want to know more, they'll ask you questions. So you come from that place rather than just, being everywhere and just, regurgitating everywhere over everybody, So it's just because this is right for you, and just because it's right for you, it may not be right for them yet. Everybody's got their own timing.
Right, and there's no one right way to view things, I guess, in this hologram that we are in. So that whatever your reality is your place, your frequency, your vibration, your moment, your existence. So
Absolutely.
We have to stop trying to put people into these boxes. This is the right way to be.
Right. Well, like I said, again, the core, it's about having experiences, and so you have to also look at what did that person come in to experience. And sometimes people are a catalyst for yourself. So sometimes what they're doing by not being in this is causing you to go more into it. So it could be that they're playing that role, to get you off your backside and do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah,
so
you never know.
You can't be going, wait a minute, you got to do it this way. It's like, no, not necessarily. They're probably doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. So
what would you say to people that are starting to get a little nudge from the universe? Like, their body's talking to them in certain ways. Maybe they're getting messages through their body, and what they think are messages from the universe. Like, what would your message be to them?
What they've told me to say is anytime, it's of your body, of them, anything, the best thing that opens the portal of communication is to say, what do you want me to know? What are you trying to tell me? And then just be open and receptive. And whatever you hear, that's them talking, and just to allow it to come through and accept it. And start moving with that, because you'll start getting confirmations. You'll start getting what you need, because at first you won't trust it. You don't believe it. It's new. But you'll get what you need to understand it and trust it. And that's all in the book. It comes in phases, and that's fine. That's human. That's normal. But the biggest thing is just to be open to it and allow it.
Was that book channeled? Do you feel that a lot of what you wrote was just automatic?
It was when I finally allowed it. It just came. I kept wanting it. I kept saying, okay, just come through me. Come on. And it wouldn't do it that way. I had to actually start working on it. And then it flowed. it started flowing in a way that I believe it was channeling is interesting to put that word on it, because this is my higher self. This is actually me that wrote it. So, I mean, it's the part that knows the bigger picture, knows everything. So I just allowed more of myself to come through to write it, really. So I don't know if that could be termed channeling. Pardon?
Who taught your higher self?
The higher self is melds with God, with Source. So see? Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of allowing, just opening yourself and allowing for more of you to come through, because you have all the answers.
Yeah, it's when you write and you're going, wow, that's interesting, what I just wrote. And then
exactly.
You're writing going, why did I write that? And then something will happen within a day or so, and it makes all perfect sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All the time. And that's where, and Debbie was saying all the rave reviews I've gotten on the book, and they haven't. I'm overwhelmed by them. I've been very humbled by all the wonderful reviews on it. But a lot of it's like I'll accept it because I don't feel like I wrote it. I mean, on one hand, I did write it, but on the other hand, it's not my ego. I'm not egoically attached to it by any means, because it wasn't. I just allowed it to come through. The information just came.
You're representing a greater source.
Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, they did good.
They do good. Yes, they do.
Yes.
Right.
So here's a message from one of Dolores's fans. It says, with incredible tenacity and dedication, Dolores forged a path for many others to open their minds that death is just a transition, and we are as alive on the other side as we are here in the physical suit of clothes called a body. Do you believe that, Julia?
Yeah. She has been coming through. So many practitioners on their practitioner forum, they've been posting stories where she's been coming through the sessions, and then she's been coming to many, many people through dreams. I finally did have one, where she was talking to me, but she's still, and then, yeah, everything. She's just as active. Like I said, she helped me finish her book, and she was almost done with it anyway. And but there's just different things. Yeah, I can feel her. She's very active. She's all over the place. Some of the messages that she's been giving people is, what she was doing here in a linear fashion, she can now do there and be everywhere all at the same time in all these dimensions. So it's really cool, because that was one of my things with her. It was one of our frictions, is I was always trying to do multitask, and it was a very linear. No, we're going to do it here. Do that, step 1, step 2, step 3. And I'm like, but we can do it this way. And now that's the reports. She's everywhere. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I think she touched so many lives, and these messages that come through over and over, just thanking her for the difference that she's made in their lives. I mean, from taking their classes, applying the knowledge, from just understanding more about, who we are and as a species and where we've been and where we're headed, religion. She crossed so many different realms, from history to religion to science to consciousness that are all questions that are unfolding right now during this, transition. So anybody that has not heard of Dolores Cannon and wants to start somewhere, where would you recommend? Which of the books should they just go to, the one that sort of calls out to them, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, I think of the population now, that's probably a good idea. What we usually say is a good book to start with is Between Death and Life or The 5 Lives Remembered, because that starts them off at kind of the basics. This is what happens to you when you die. This is what's going on, things like that. So, but so much of the population now is okay to start with a convoluted universe material or something like that. They're much more in a different place. They're already ready for that. So it depends on where you are, but usually we just say, just look at them and see what resonates. Start with.
Yeah, so here's another one. Dolores Cannon, thank you so much for all you did for humanity and for so long. I'm really glad and eternally grateful to have had you around in this crazy place. You were the one person we could count on to keep it real.
Yeah.
And that kind of sums it up, too, for a lot of us, because just hearing it from a soft-spoken, almost a grandmotherly type of a transmission, it helps us see that it's grounded in love and grounded in reality and grounded in our own knowledge base, right? It rings so true that it's easy information to absorb. And for children out there, for parents and mothers and fathers who have children, don't be afraid to introduce these concepts, you know. Don't be afraid to talk to them about this multidimensional universe. I mean, it's an open subject, right, Julia?
Absolutely, and probably what you'll find is if you start talking about it, they'll start teaching you. So, because you'll open these memories, they know it. They've just been shut down. So if we start opening it, they'll probably start filling in the blanks.
Right, and their understanding is so immense that it'll give them the freedom and the permission to get out of that box and get out of that illusion a lot faster. So
right.
It's a nice conversation to have. Julia, you have been such a joy to have on the show, and your legacy here is going to continue on and on. So we are just we're so excited to see everything that's going to be happening with you and Ozark Mountain Publishing as you move forward, and we hope we can have you on again and talk some more about all this fantastic work.
That'll be wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure for being here, my honor. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Signing off from Lost Knowledge. It's been a great conversation with Julia Cannon.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Hi everybody, it's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there's Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.